Well, good morning, folks. This is I think it was a 1924 Dodge Brothers Roadster. This is when it was done. Here's a trip of a finished product halfway to San Francisco. This is when I first got the project. It's just sitting here. I had it shipped from South Dakota, I believe. It was covered with cement in some places. It was really beat up, but I got most of the car with it. This is a window crank part here. You can see the fenders were there, had no running boards, had no interior in it. The doors were on it and they did work. Somebody had cut it up pretty good, and it just sat in the field for many years. Didn't have a top on it. That's the back of it. None of this is bolted on right now. It's just sitting on. I might have one or two bolts in it. It was beat up good. It was rusty. It was rusted through in a few places. One side was a lot worse than the other. It had some sort of a frame on it. You can see there in the back there was a tank that came with the thing, gas tank. I never did use that, but it was mostly all there. This is the inside of the trunk. It was fairly straight. It wasn't too bad rust. I wound up with I don't know, I think an 82 Jaguar or something like that, and I took that all apart. I used that for the running gear. At the time, I thought I was going to put a turbocharged V6 in it, which I did, and it didn't have enough power to untrack itself. So I pulled it all out again and put a 289 in it. Here's just some of the pictures as I'm looking at it. I wasn't making videos at the time. I was just shooting still pictures. I really wasn't paying much attention to YouTube. And these are some of this is a seat here. I did have part of a seat. There were a lot of pieces. It just came in pieces. And I was at this point, as I'm looking at it, there was a block that came with it. That's the original block. There's a cowl that came with it, and this was a Dodge Brothers cowl. I don't remember if I used that or not. I believe I did, but it had the fenders and some places on the frame there for the running board. I had the frame, so it wasn't like I had to make everything. I don't remember if that old tank came with it. That was something I bought off of eBay. You can see the hood here and the side. This is a friend of mine. I was leasing a place at a tire shop. This is a Pro Street Falcon that I had built. And this was a little V6 that I'd got, and I was going to put a turbo on. Just more of here's the dash. That was a lot of work on this car, and I appreciate you watching these videos, and if you would, I'd like it if you'd subscribe and help me grow the channel. It's kind of raining out here now, so what I'm doing is going through some of these old bills and trying to make some more content. Here's a couple gauges I'd got. This is a friend of mine. He was an electrician. We had a lot of work, and this is the car that I had bought for the originally I was just going to use the rear end, but I wound up using the front end and the rear end. I used the seats out of it. Here we got the car flipped upside down. We're trying to repair some of the rust that was in the bottom. I fiberglassed most of this, and squirted a little primer on it. We're just trying to kill the rust. Some of it was rusted all the way through, and that's what I did. I just fiberglassed everything that was rusted through. The seat pan wasn't in bad shape. There was a lot of welding that I did here around the cowl area because it was ripped and torn. So I welded all that up, and then here I fiberglassed it again, trying to get the cowl smooth. The fenders were cracked, of course, and I welded those up. This is just a little cheap Harbor Freight 110 amp welder. You can see the Jaguar there that I'm going to eventually tear apart. I was continuing to weld the cracks in the fenders and trying to make this all solid. I don't remember what part that was, but we were just cleaning it up, and this guy helped me for a few days, but basically I did this whole car by myself. I worked quite a bit on the body, just getting the body straight. This is the frame. It looked alright. It wasn't bent or anything. So what I did was just strip it all and primed it and then painted it. And you can see there it looks really good. And I use Rust-Oleum or Pure 15, I don't remember. Here I had started using rust treatment on the fenders before I painted them, and I just kind of did this a piece at a time, and as you can see, there was nothing really mocked up there. There was a lot of dents in the old deck lid. Here are the doors that went on it. I did quite a bit of work on them. The firewall was in pretty good shape. The hoods was bent up, but they were in decent shape. So I put rust treatment on that. This was around 4th of July, so somehow a picture of the fireworks got in here. Here's the frame I had got put on the car. I'd cleaned it up and painted it, and I had set the Jaguar rear end underneath it. You can see the mounting brackets and everything there, and I put the fenders on it and cleaned up everything. Here's the rack and pinion steering that was out of the Jaguar. I did a lot of measuring and everything, and right here I'm just getting it set up to where it's in the frame. I fabricated mounts for the rear, welded them and painted it, and you can see the Jaguar front end here is pretty close to where it needed to go on the frame rails. Here's the power steering unit, and another shot here where I was welding it together and fabricating these brackets. This is a little Harbor Freight cheap welder, but you can do a good job with these things if you take your time and weld them. Here I got the brackets pretty much fabricated for the bracket and the front end here. I was jacking it up with a jack to see how much play and movement I had. Then I got the body and I set it back on the frame here. Of course, with nothing there at all but a frame, it was pretty stiff. And you can see there that the Jaguar stuff, the shock stuck up real high. That little motor there on the left is a V6 that I was going to put in it. And once I got it on a frame with running gear, then I started mocking up the fenders and I used the old Jaguar wheels here at this point. Didn't have any good tires on it, but I was just basically putting the frame, putting the body on the frame, and I had to took out the Jaguar steering wheel and put it in here. These are bear claw latches. They're really good. These old cars, when you hit bumps, the doors pop open, and those bear claws will really slam good and lock good. But here I put on the hood and the cowl and everything, and it's starting to look like a car at this point. This was a period of, oh, I don't know, I think it took me about 3 months to build this car. At this point I had probably worked on it probably a month. There was a lot of the work just taking the Jaguar apart. Here I've got it pretty much mocked up. Now I test fit this motor down in there. It was a guaranteed motor. It did run okay, it just was gutless. But I had cleaned it up and came with a transmission, so I don't know where that radiator came from. I think that's one that I had with another project. But I'm trying to figure out how to hook up my motor mounts, and of course I had to turn the manifolds around so I could get the turbo up on top. But I had cleaned up the motor and starting to mount it in here. I thought for sure that it would be it would run really good. I spent, I don't know, a couple weeks probably putting in this motor, and there was some pretty nasty looking motor mounts in there because the motor was so small. And then I started stripping the Jaguar, trying to see what I could take out of the Jaguar, and here I got the seats out of it, and I put those into it, and they were nice seats. They weren't torn up or anything. That was a very comfortable car when it was all done. Well, it was basically that 85 Jaguar. And now I moved on to the back. I had to make myself motor mounts for the rear transmission, and I was just welded it all in. I was thinking about bolting it, but it was too much trouble. And here I am just drilling holes in the thing. That was for the cowl. I put a plate in for a big brake pedal, and I used a double master cylinder. I had plenty of room to do all of that. I moved on to the floorboard. I made it out of 3/4 inch plywood. I put the old seat pan in it here, and the seats on top of it, and it turned out it was a real comfortable seating. And here I am mounting the brake pedal assembly into it, and then I had to figure out where the steering went. I put the steering in it, and then I finished up the floorboard. This didn't take too long, a couple days, and it was raining on and off, and I took the hood off of the Jaguar and I just put it over the top of the car just to keep the water out of it. And the more I looked at it, the more it looked like it was going to be I could turn it into a roof. Here again, I'm still working on a seat pan, and of course the seats were just set in it, so I needed to fabricate sliders for them so I could bolt them in, and the seat would go back and forth. So here I've clamped a bunch of steel into it. Like I said, I wasn't shooting video at the time, so these are all a bunch of still pictures. Here I put some seat belt brackets. I bolted them in through the frame, and then I moved on to the steering. A lot of these pictures don't look like much was done, but you can see the hoods laying up on top of the car, and eventually that's what it became, was the top of the car. And I fooled around with some, I had to completely make a steering unit. So I decided here, as you can see where I cut the headlights off of the hood of the Jaguar, and it turned out it had a nice curve in it, and it was almost big enough. So I decided I was going to turn that into a roof, and you can still see the headlight things on it, and it wasn't quite wide enough. But anyway, I welded this thing all in here, and had to cut some pieces out. Again, you can see this little Harbor Freight welder, and of course I had humps in there, so I had to take the humps out from the headlights. And what I was doing was just putting another piece of metal. I think this is one I cut out of the side of the car or something that had a nice curve to it, and I put that in there, welded it in. And this is fiberglass. You can still see the Jaguar emblem there on top. I don't know what this is, just a picture of, it was a hot day or something, and I was drinking a lot of Coke. And there it is, pretty much cut up and put in a fiberglass. And then I had the side of the car, the side of the hood, I had big gaps in there. I used a lot of Bondo on that thing. That was what was left of the headlights. At one point I thought I'd try to put the headlights on, and you can see it really looks stupid there, there's some more of my bear claw latches that I welded into the door. And then I started moving on, trying to patch up these side pieces here on the roof. There's a lot of welding and grinding and mixing Bondo and putting Bondo on. It must have took me, I don't know, a week at least to put this hood and everything together. But you can see I'm welding a piece in. Again, this is funny, where I was thinking about, would the lights work? And I had these old 10-inch lights. I couldn't figure out how to put lights in it. Anyway, I'll stop this little video right here, or the sound right here, and work on another one. You see, I had to actually cut the lights up from the Jaguar and put them in there. Yeah, I wasn't happy with any of that. Alright, I don't know what I was doing here. I think this is where I started moving on with the gas tank. I had this big round gas tank, and I had bought some J-bins from eBay. And so these are just pictures of stuff that I had. Some of these pictures might be out of sequence. But here's one of the headlights. I don't know what those were off of, a 36 pickup or something like that. And nothing was really making much sense to me. So anyway, I moved on here. I put the turbocharger on it. I fabricated myself an exhaust manifold, and here I didn't have a pipe bender, so all of these are done with cutting them off with a cutoff tool, tacking them together, and then welding all of those things up. So this was a couple days making this rig here, and I'd get tired of welding and I'd move on to Bondoing a door. Looks like I was still trying to decide what to do with the lights again. Again, some of these pictures might be duplicates. It was getting dark that day, but I had got the turbo in, and just taking some pictures of the front of the motor. I got a radiator in it, and I started figuring out how to hook up the hoses. I wasn't even sure if that radiator was any good. Still thinking about putting a Jaguar grill on it at this point. I don't know what that is, some big heim joint. So I moved on with hooking up the Jaguar rear end. You can see the trailing arms are sticking out there, and I was starting to get close to a final paint here. This is spot putty that I put around the roof. I sanded on that thing for days. I thought spot putty was going to be good enough for it. It was kind of expensive, but anyway, here I pulled the front end off again, make sure I got the motor in. Like I said, and there's where I used a heim joint and just welded it right to the Jaguar trailing arm, and I was able to mount it up into the frame's original trailing arm place. I'm working on the body here some more under the doors. There was one of them that was rusted out real bad. The doors, of course, were really deeply pitted, and it was really hot out there, and I put this blue big tarp up to keep the sun off, so that's why all these pictures are blue. And I found out that certain colors you don't want to paint under a blue tarp. This was all rusted completely out on the bottom. I fiberglassed it and fixed it. Now if I was to do it, I'd cut that all out and put a piece of metal in it, but at the time I didn't know. Here it got finally shot in primer. It's starting to look pretty good. I hadn't figured out how to mount my fenders yet, but I basically was just going around painting the car. It's starting to look pretty decent. Of course, once you get it in primer, then you have a million dents in it, but it's starting to come together, and I went back in again with my body putty and cleaned up all the edges where I thought that they might need it, and eventually I wound up just body puttying the whole car. If I would have known what I know now, I would have done this a little different. I would have just covered it with Bondo and sanded it, but at the time I didn't know that they had this thinner that you could use, or you could use fiberglass to do this with. So I'm just put primer on it and paint it and body putty it and paint it. And again, this is all under that blue tarp. That's why everything looks blue. And I kept going around and around on this thing. The more I got to do it, first I was just going to put it together like a rat rod, didn't care about the paint or anything. But as I started getting the project together, it looked better and better, and I'd fix one place and it looked pretty good, and then the place right next to it looked terrible, and so I'd work on that place and I'd prime that, and then the one next to that one looked like it was terrible, so I'd fix it and prime it, and then the one next to it. Here I am kind of admiring my roof that I did. I tried to mold all that stuff with Bondo, and I had wrapped the turbo there with asbestos, and then finally I shot the top of it black. I was going to paint it black and root beer, and of course when I put that black paint on there, man, you could really see every dent in it. And I still got my Jaguar lights laying there. You can see there how bad the body work was. And some places look real good. So this led to another week of playing with stuff. At least I had the car all apart, and so I was trying to, once I'd shoot my black glossy paint, then I would shoot the inside of the fenders. And I'd sand it and put more paint on it. The doors are starting to look pretty good here, and this roof took quite a while to do. because it was black glossy paint. And like I said, then I would shoot the inside of the fenders or something. Here I am, probably kind of tired that day. I have this picture of the particular product that I was using. This was all done outside, and I wasn't really trying to do a super good job, but it turned out as long as the wind wasn't blowing and I kept everything clean, I was actually getting pretty good paint job. And here the black was going on the fenders, and they're starting to look really good. Of course, I had dust and stuff blowing around on it, but this is one of the things that I found out, that it was good to just paint everything black and didn't worry too much about the dust and dirt, and then let it harden real good and sand it, and then paint it again and tarp things up. Here I'm working on the door hinges again. Yeah, bear claw latches. This was another one I started on the trunk, and this thing was really beat up. And you can see around here at this point that I was trying to get the body to look nice. I wound up, I don't know, I must have spent a couple $100 on body putty. And things are starting to look pretty good at this point. Now I start another part of this. Now here's where I first shot the gold yellow paint, and it looked really nice. I had done a good job on the body work. At least I thought I did, and I knew I still had to work on that black, but you can see I was pretty tickled with the job that I did. And I went inside the dash and painted that all yellow, and then of course my trunk needed a lot more sanding, and it looks like I was kind of out of sequence here. This was before I painted the yellow. This was basically body putty before I painted it yellow, and I'm just putting it on there best I can, shoot primer and sand it off. Looks like that was where I was getting ready to paint it. Now we're back into paint. It must have been a couple days before, but here it is painted. I painted the frame all the yellow color too, and you can see it's getting to be pretty glossy. I used a single stage acrylic enamel. It actually was really nice paint. This is why I said the blue, painting it under the blue and that yellow, it would look pretty good. I'd have it all painted, but it was in that blue light, and then I'd take my tarp down to see what it looked like, and oh man, I had streaks and stuff all over it because the blue paint, or the blue light coming through that tarp on this yellow paint, was really giving me some different stuff. You can kind of see here, I think I pulled the tarp back to get daylight on it at this point. You can see there where it was. This is under the blue tarp again. And then when I started using a bright white light, then I started seeing a lot of stuff. But the paint was looking pretty good, and I tried to get the bottom. I was going to get it all good, and then I could mask it and paint the black. I knew it was going to be the hardest to do. So I must have spent 2 weeks at least trying to paint this thing. I paint a little and rub a little and squirt some more, but at the end of it, it was starting to look real nice. That acrylic enamel was hardening up pretty fast, and then I was able to color sand it and put a little more on. I don't know which ones of these were color sanded and where I was at, but it looks like I was just about ready to finish with the yellow paint. You can see a couple places there where it has little dark spots, but you can see there the blue tarp was giving me a blue shine down into my paint, and it was really messing me up. I didn't realize it at the time, and I don't know, there was some big wind or something come along and I pulled my tarp off, and it was just, you know, spotty as hell. Now I worked on the roof some more, and that's what I would do. I'd sand until I get tired, and then I'd paint something, and then I'd wait for that to dry, and I'd come back, and you can see here where I've picked up some bad places, and I was getting pretty close to a final paint job. I must have painted this thing 3 or 4 times. You can see the Jaguar on top there. That was funny. I thought that was great to leave that Jaguar on top of the hood. Make everybody ask, why'd you put a Jaguar on it? You know, because it's an old hood. So I pretty much got the black paint done here, and then I went around the yellow and re-body puttied, refilled, and resanded all of the bottom, and it was looking pretty good at this point. I know that a lot of these pictures were maybe not too interesting, but anyway, if you guys would like, or you find some value in this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe. I'm trying to build a channel. There's a picture of my Jaguar hood again. So this was a very interesting build. It took me about 3 months. At this point, I'm getting close to calling it done, and I didn't have any glass. I don't remember what I did. I think I used some plexiglass in it. I don't remember. It'll show up here. Here was my old Dodge Brothers. That was the original grill that was supposed to go in the car. You can see it was in pretty decent shape, and so I started. This is actually black paint on those fenders. So I got this shell, radiator shell, and I had to cut a chunk out of it in order to get it on the car. Now here I was working on the fenders again. I'd painted them black, went over them again, body putty. Like I said, some of these pictures here I wound up, you can see I completely body puttied the whole fender. I didn't really realize how much I was going to have to put on it at the time. If I would have known that, I would have done it a little different, but I didn't. And every time I would get one thing what would look good, you know, I get the hood looking good and the fender looked like crap, you know. I get the fender looking good and then the panel right next to it looked bad. So you can see the black paint there. This has probably been painted 3 or 4 times. And then I finally painted the hood. That was a lot of fun. And I'm getting close to finishing on the yellow paint. And there's the top. The paint job was starting to look pretty good at this point. I got my cowl mocked up. I was pretty pleased with the way the job was turning out here. You can see it's real glossy and it doesn't have a lot of waves in it. And then I started working seriously on putting the motor in it. I'll start another narration for this part of the video just to make sure that I don't lose it. Alright, so here's the, I don't know what it was, Buick V6 or something. I don't even remember where I got that thing. But I was trying to get the master cylinder and everything hooked up. I didn't have the right lines. I soldered brake lines together. once I had got it painted, then I could move on to finishing up the motor. And I thought it was going to stay together, so I put a lot of work in detailing the motor and painting it and cleaning it. I didn't realize that it was just all going to come out of there. Again, I had some pieces left from a Jaguar that the front end come out of, and I had to buy some heim joints. And then I went on to mounting the fenders on it, and these were aluminum rear ends, and so I tried to clean them up and polish them, and turned out I spent about half a day on that one, and I finally decided, nah, we'll just leave them kind of bad looking. I worked on that thing with a wire brush for a long time. And here I'm putting on something. I got my cut-off tool and my Starbucks there, and I'm putting in the brake lines. And like I said, you know, I had Jaguar stuff on one end, and I don't know, this old Chevy Master cylinder, and I didn't really have any brake line adapters, so I soldered them together. I finally decided that I would work on these headlights. They were rusted out all the way around, so I tried to clean them up best I could. I don't believe that I welded them, but I just put Bondo and tried to clean them up good and get them to look nice. And here was kind of end of the day. It looks like I had it under a light, a trouble light. I had put the big washers, fender washers and everything on the bolts, and then I started painting the inside of the car, and then I put the doors in. Now the Jaguar doors were quite a bit different. You can see that's the Jaguar electric window, so I had to cut the bottom of them off, but I was able to put the Jaguar door panels in it with the speakers and all that. They were too short at the bottom, and then but I did have the electronics in it, and I managed to get it all cut up, got them inside the doors, and then I was trying to fool around with that gas tank back on the doors again, and I got a Mustang shifter, something like that. A lot of this stuff I was doing it all at the same time. I had to make a bracket for the shifter here, and then I'm working on the transmission and the mounting and everything for that. Here's part of the front end again. I don't even remember what this was. There we go. There's a Jaguar pretty much stripped out, and I got my shifter made into my floor. I found me a gas pedal, throttle pedal, and I put that all in there. That was kind of a trick, getting the motor pulled from the side, the throttle accelerated from the side, and my throttle pedal was coming out of the firewall, so it had to go around a circle. And then I started making the mounts for the front end, and I was going to use a blow-through carburetor, so I tried to use this little 2-barrel, and the guy I bought the motor from said it ran good and everything. I believed him, and it did start, and it ran okay. The carburetor was bad, but anyway, I took the bumper off the Jaguar here, and I decided I was going to use it for a bumper. This is one of my little helpers that worked in the tire shop next door. And then I moved on to wiring the car. I got a painless 20 circuit wiring kit, and of course if you've ever wired a car, you're going to have days of wires running all over the place. and that's what I did. I had to plan out for my fan and everything like this. So I started continuing on with the wires here. I lost my sound there, but I was going on. I put turn signals on top of the fenders. I started taping up my harnesses to make them kind of right. Start running my turn signal flashers, emergency flashers. Started working on the hood, the radiator, and all that stuff. I've got the motor in here. It was getting dark that day, but here's a turbo in the motor, and it all looks pretty good. I think I'd got it running at that point because I got an air cleaner on it. There's a battery in the back, and you can see the overspray of the yellow paint in there. I hooked up. Alright, we're recording again. I don't know what happened. Wife come along and sit on the keyboard. Here it is, some dark pictures. I had put the Jaguar wheels on it. I had found some various gauges. This one here, I was running out of money and I didn't have a lot of money to buy gauges, so I had some stuff that I had laying around, buy cheap stuff off of eBay. And I decided that it would be best to put an electric fan in there. So here I am, I'm trying to mock up the motor, and it was drivable. So here's a fan cooling switch, thermostat housing, or thermostat, remote thermostat. And I'm still working on the doors here on and off. You saw them on the car, but I had to wire them all, and I'm into the wiring. And it had the shoulder seat belt harnesses. You know, I took pictures of here on and off all day. Sometimes I would take them at the end of the day and they'd be out of sequence, and so I don't know what I used this bumper for. I believe this was a rear bumper off the Jaguar. Then I had put windows in it. These are all the window frames. I actually bought glass for that, now that I remember. So most of the stuff was square glass. You can see where my little work area is, and I had got it running and I took it home. This was the first day. That's outside my little shop where I built it. And there's a 65 Comet Pro Street that I built, and it was running and driving, so I would drive it home and test it, and then I'd come back and work on it. I come up with this air cleaner here. It ran and okay, and it drove okay, but it only run about 40-50 miles an hour. It just wasn't very good. I don't know why I took another picture of this Jaguar. I was going to try to use some of the dash and stuff out of it, and just taking pictures. Here's part of the motor. I was kind of thinking that I could use that motor for something else, but it was too much trouble to try to do anything. Now, I decided that I needed another motor. This is a 302. A friend of mine loaned me his pickup, and I went and got this 302 and a C4 transmission. Supposed to run and drive. I don't know what it was out of, 64 Mercury or something. And so I took out that little V6, and it turned out I had to take a lot of stuff out. I had fabricated all that lines and everything with a motor in it. So I had to just cut a lot of it out, and I cleaned the motor up. I painted it gold. I don't know why I did. I just did. And set it down in the car here. And then I had to work on my steering a little, or my steering joints. I got those in. I got the motor in and got the basically where it would go. Then I had to work on the drive line. But here I was just mocking up the motor, making sure that I got my fuel pump laying there, electric fuel pump. I used electric on a lot of that. Here I was fabricating the rear transmission mount, and I got myself a 4-barrel for it. And again, I had to relocate some of this stuff for the radiator because of course that motor was way different. And my power steering pump. I think about this time I got the motor started and running, and here was the how I relocated the battery and the fuel pump and all that stuff. One thing about Ford motors, you know, the distributor's in the front, so it makes it a lot easier to work on. And then I had to plan radiator hoses and nothing was fitting, and I put 2 or 3 different deals in it. I found an old set of headers. I don't know where I got them, but I put the headers in it, got them all working, and then painted them chrome or silver. Here I got the headers in, and no pipe bender again, so they're all cut and custom modified so I could at least get them running under there to a collector. And I had to work on my steering some more, and then here it is, kind of more or less all bolted together. I still didn't put any floorboards or anything on it, and I found a good set of knockoff Jaguar wheels. I worked there in a tire store or next door to it there, so I was always getting good deals on wheels and tires. And those gold spoke rims worked real good. Turned out that a big fan wouldn't fit, so I used 2 little ones, one in front and back. There's the Jaguar rear end again. I got it up, and now I'm just trying to figure out what kind of wheels and tires I can use. This was the Jaguar rear end. Like I say, some of these are out of sequence. It looks like this is when I was putting the rear end in it. I don't know what I did. Looks like it was already painted. But anyway, the red thing is the Jaguar knockoff wheels. I mounted the rear end in there, and the wheels were on it and done. This was done, and I managed to get it licensed. This is a picture of what one looked like originally. I had a whole bunch of these. That was running and driving, and I used a Mercedes grill there, and I had bought a nice piece of hardwood, and I just used lag bolts and put a running board on it. At this point I was driving around and drove good, and so it was all running good, and I needed to go to LA, and this is about 100 miles out of San Francisco, one of the first gas stations. But I drove it all the way to Los Angeles. Here we are out in the middle of the desert. This is 2008, and I put quite a bit more here. I got to LA. I think I was getting my passport redone or something. And this is close to my old house. That was my old shop there. Just a old picture of the motor going in it out of sequence. Well, that's the end of our video here. So if you will, please like and subscribe. Help me build this channel. It may not have been too interesting, but if you got something out of it, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this. Alright? Have a nice day. Bye-bye.